All right, let's jump in, Leslie. I'm going to jump in real quick, and we're going to start our well, we'll start our morning, our Wednesday morning, like we always do. Really, just kind of taking a look at where are we? Where are we as a brokerage network? What I love about this call is it allows us to see almost our entire state now, right? It allows us to see where's the real estate market from north to south and almost east to west across the state, and that will allow us to know kind of where we see perhaps migration patterns between the state, but economically, oftentimes some of our counties or some of our towns or cities will follow others as well. So that's been a real big benefit for all of us. On your screen, you'll see just an overview of what's going on in each one of our marketplaces, in new listings, price changes, back on markets, pendings, bumpable or contingent offers accepted and sold. Now, what's interesting is, and probably in the next couple of weeks, we'll shift this. And instead of looking week over week, week over week, week over week, we're going to bring you back to look month over month over month, and just make sure that we're not losing touch with where we are in comparison to a month ago or a year ago. The week over week gives us some great talking points immediately with our clients, with our buyers, with our sellers, investors, and other agents potentially that we're doing deals with. And as you know, many of those agents are actually our guests on these calls as well. But let's just talk quick overview, and then I'm going to share some graphs that I pulled from yesterday's session through Oregon Association of Realtors, and hopefully many of you got to watch that webinar. I spent some time watching it as well, so definitely time well spent with an economist that they brought in. But as you can see, Portland, the Portland market was pretty flat and listings taken. There was an increase in price adjustments, which is interesting, right? As we saw about a 14-15% increase as people look at, well, I'm on the market, other people aren't, why? And make some of those price adjustments. We saw an increase in back on markets too, which surprised me, right? Deals coming back to market, maybe a motivational shift between buyer and seller during that inspection period, potentially financing as well. We'll watch that closely. We saw an increase in pendings, no surprise there. I think the real story is if you look at 870 listings in our market and 893 pendings. What does that tell you? That's not sustainable, right? Look at actually market after market. You're going to see the same story. Eugene, 146 listings, 174 pendings, right? Salem, 111 new listings, 235 pendings. Corvallis, 91 listings, 106 pendings, right? Southern Oregon, 170 listings, 221 pendings. We have an issue, right? We have an issue with inventory, and we'll continue to, as long as the buyer demand is as strong as it is, and as long as the seller motivation to put it on the market, dictated by how well we do with getting it on the market, just is lagging. So good to see those numbers or understand those numbers in Portland. Eugene was flat in listings taken as well. We saw a reduction in price changes. We saw a reduction in back end markets. We saw an increase in pendings as expected there. And again, contingents and solds. We saw an increase in contingent offers. No real story there because there's not a lot. And just really the sold market was flat week over week. Salem, flat in listings taken, increase in price changes in back end markets. Again, that might be a motivational conversation to have with our clients. We saw an increase in contingent offers accepted and a big decrease week over week in closings. Remember, that's just how many closed last week, how many closed this week. We saw that drop off. That doesn't tell a story of where we are. It tells a story ultimately of where we were. And we're going to actually see some national graphs here in what the market looked like in March and April. We're really seeing national numbers for March and April, right? Not May yet. That'll come out next month. Corvallis, drop in listings, increase in price changes in back end markets. That seems to be consistent almost across every market, right? An increase in pendings and a slight decrease in solds, 67 to 64, pretty much flat. And then Southern Oregon. Finally, guys, we see an increase in listings taken, right? That's been a long time since we've seen that. So a little bit of loosening of that inventory. Interestingly enough, we sold all those listings as well, right? When we look at the number of listings, 173 listings down there, new, 221 new pendings. We saw a decrease in price changes that's expected down there. an increase in back-end markets, interestingly enough, and then obviously an increase in sold, about almost 9% increase week over week from sold properties. So that's where our state is. Now let's talk a little bit about some information. We believe that data will help drive decisions, right? By collecting data. In fact, we're gonna have a conversation about command, and so much of, right, David, command is built on this premise that, gosh, data will allow us to make decisions in our business, right? Financial decisions, budgeting decisions, but consumers will make decisions when they have data too. And no company has more data than we do. But let's look at some national data and just have some conversations economically. This was shared I believe yesterday, actually, in that webinar. You'll notice that there's an increase in affordability showing up, and that's surprising, right? Because most of us would think, well, gosh, prices aren't going down, so what's happening in affordability? Interestingly enough, from a year ago today, and I know this is a difficult conversation to have, but those with jobs are actually making more money, right? So salaries have gone up surprisingly, right? And again, we're looking at data in March and April. We may see affordability go back again as well as incomes potentially go down. Especially in the Portland metro area in Oregon, we've seen some decreases in salaries, but nationally we've seen increase in salaries, we've seen decrease in mortgage rates, right? And so affordability in the top 100 metro areas has actually increased. Affordability has gotten better by about 9%. You'll see actually Portland Metro show up there as well. Portland Metro, it shows our affordability better by 17%. Now, this is just the top 100 metro areas across the country. So, right, Medford, you're not going to be there. Salem's not going to be there. You're right. Eugene, Springfield isn't going to show up. But this is actually a trend for us to be mindful of, and actually have that conversation. Remember to have the conversation about affordability with our buyers. So improving affordability across the country, inventory availability, right? Active listing inventory. Now, this isn't new listings coming to the market. This is at a snapshot in time, what is the inventory available? Well, gosh, inventory dropped 18% in the top 100 metro areas, guys, from a year ago. In the Portland metro, it's the only one, right, that will show up in that top 100 in our state, and it shows up here as back 17%, right? One of the toughest inventory markets in terms of available inventory, largely because our market continues to move and people continue to buy. So that's the good news. But our inventory, we're going to see that issue across the country, and it's probably going to be here for probably I would say the next quarter, potentially the next 2 quarters. This is an interesting conversation as well right now. Millennials are making up about 26% of the population in the top 100 markets. Not sure how many read the article in the New York Times. Gosh, was it this weekend or the weekend before? But that millennials may put the pause button on investing in real estate, right? We have to be mindful of that, because if 26% of our population in the top 100 metros are millennials, and only a small percentage of millennials are buying homes, right? The future buyers, that next generation of buyers, we need to do a better job educating them about wealth building through real estate. In the Portland metro area, it shows about 19% of our population falls within that millennial category. Job declines, right? Jobs declined by about 13% in the top 100 metros. Now, some of our markets have experienced much greater job declines. And this has changed through April, by the way, guys. So March, right, was included. April was included. Again, this is the top 100 metros. We know in towns and areas and counties where they're not the top 100, we've seen upwards of 18, 19, 20% job declines in some of our Oregon towns. So be mindful of that. Portland down about 12% compared to last year, so right in line with the national average. Here's an inventory graph that was from yesterday's webinar for those of you that were on it, right? This is showing month over month going back to, gosh, I think 1999. If you can see that, again, like always, we'll send out these graphs, but we see inventory really peaking, right? In that 06, 07, 08, there was enough houses for everybody and more. And then we've seen that just consistent decline, even in 15, down in 16, down in 17, down in 18, 19 again, and then sure enough, look at this year. So inventory is the lowest we've seen since 1999. Part of that, guys, is understanding that was talked about yesterday. If you missed that webinar, that new construction just hasn't rebounded ever, right? New construction never rebounded to where it was in terms of bringing that inventory to the market. Inventory here, we'll see that dark blue line is kind of where we started in January and February and March and April, and has done us no favors, right? So we were already below inventory levels of 2013 and 14 and 15 and 16, and obviously we're headed in the wrong direction March and April thus far. Again, these are national numbers, but it's the lowest inventory we've seen in a decade, really, almost more. Now, this is an interesting graph that I found. I think this might have come from the New York Times, but this is the cities where supply is rising faster than demand. Some of us wish we were there, right? So we've begun to see just a little bit of supply increasing faster than demand there in San Francisco and Orange County, parts of Detroit, Buffalo, right? New York and LA. Over the course of COVID for sure. And then where you see demand is rising faster than supply, that is every single one of our markets. You'll see that Portland is there towards the top of all markets. They're at 0.12, about 12%. So our demand is rising about 12% faster than our supply is showing up. It's not a bad graph or chart to share with sellers that say, maybe I'll see what happens, right? Anytime demand is rising faster than supply, and I'm thinking about selling, I'm going to come to market. Prices, right? This is the Case-Shiller year-over-year index. And so we've seen some definite deceleration, right? We saw deceleration of the increase in pricing. Keep in mind, we're still above zero, right? That means year-over-year pricing in March and in April and in January, February as well, were higher in that specific month than the same month prior year. So year over year, this year, we're about 3.3 to 4.5% above year over year average, depending on whether that's the 10 city composite, 20 city composite, or nationally as a country. So again, from an investment standpoint, from a buyer, right, being nervous about investing, it's a great time in our country to be a homeowner. Pending home sales, you see what happened, right? In March and April, it just dropped, and that is 100% COVID related. What's interesting is our May numbers that are not reported here. Our May numbers look quite positive. And so the reality is that's our industry, buyers, sellers, and agents figuring out, well, how do we transact business? How do we show a house virtually? How do we buy a house virtually? We were just a little bit too slow, to be honest, in dealing with that. Otherwise, we would have seen that drop off probably over 1 month, not two. But pending home sales, quite honestly, dropped, right? When we look at percentage of increase year over year. And The Economist yesterday through OAR, the Oregon Association of Realtors, said that they expect us to get right back to where we were probably May, June, and July as well. So good number to just be aware of. There we are again, just looking a little bit different. Pending home sales at this moment are right where we were back in 2011, actually. So we'll watch that in May and June. And then this is the last one I'm going to share, and then we're going to transition. But this is something I always look at. I've shared for years that I believe that the consumer confidence index, right, or the consumer comfort index, as he labeled his graph, is a really, really, really good indication of where the market is and where it's going, and where buyer and seller motivation lie. You can see it dropped off a cliff, didn't it? right about March and April. It just kept on going down. But what's happened towards the tail end of April, the last couple of weeks of April, interestingly enough, consumer confidence ticked back up, right? It jumped back up, and we'll see what happens here in right, the first few weeks of May as that shows up in reports, and then right, June numbers for the entire month of May. So thought it was good to look at that consumer confidence index as well. All right, that's what I got. At this point, I'm gonna have Leslie actually introduce our guest and move towards a conversation that is probably the most important conversation for us as business owners and those that plan on being in the industry for the next 1, 3, 5, 10, 50 years. It's the most important conversation we could be having right now. So thrilled so many of us have joined us. And Leslie, I'm gonna give you the floor.
Awesome. Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to see everybody commenting in the chat box. We're going to encourage you to do that as we proceed through the rest of the state of the industry. So if you do have any questions, thoughts in regards to our next presentation, please feel free to jump in, chime in, and we will address as many as we possibly can. So every week, we promise to bring you the latest tools and tactics that are working right now. And today we are so excited to bring you an expert in the technology for our industry. He is truly a tech master. Not only is he a licensed real estate agent since 2015, he currently serves as an agent and operational leader for our Austin-based Gun Real Estate Group. And he is the labs manager for Keller Williams International. And I love this. His job is to channel the voice of the agent into the software that we use to disrupt the traditional approach to real estate by building the platform aimed at providing the best agent-driven consumer experience. So I'd like to welcome to the call our tech master, David Voorhees.
Thank you. That was someone better than me wrote that bio, I'll tell you that. Thanks for having me. It's always good to be with you guys. Anytime I can be with Chris and the Experience Network is a good time. It's so interesting to me to listen to your state of the industry, Chris, because it mirrors Austin. I was looking at all those graphs, and I mean, as far as Portland goes, you know, I know there's other cities on the call, but Portland and Austin are really, really similar, I think, from what they saw going on. So it's interesting to hear that kind of we're in the same market. And Leslie, thank you. Exactly right. My first job is I'm a real estate agent, and I have a team here in Austin. I have a business partner who handles much of the day-to-day as I do this most of the day. But we're about 100 unit a year team. We're pretty small. It's myself, him, one buyer's agent, a couple of admin. And so I'm still doing this every day. I'm probably gonna have to terminate a contract today because of an inspection, and I've got some photos getting taken for a listing that's hitting the market next week. So I'm still doing this every day like you guys are. What I do for Keller Williams International is I'm your voice. If my job had a mission statement, it would be to help agents run more efficient, more profitable businesses. And I do that in a number of ways. Number one is I spend a lot of time with our technology team, but not just them. It's everyone that builds something for the field. Anyone at Keller Williams International that here in Austin that's working for the agent most likely has never been an agent. There's a handful of us that are licensed and have worked as an agent and still do work as agents. But by and large, the people that build things for you guys, whether that's marketing material or courses from KWU or technology, never end up using the products as an end user. And so my job, along with Jason Abrams and Kelly Cody, who represents the market center side of things, our job is to make all of the people that build things for you smarter. And our hypothesis is if people that build the things that you use think more like you think, then they'll build better things. And so we spend a lot of our time doing that. I'd say 25% of the time I spend my time directly with Gary and Josh talking about kind of what's next and what we're hearing from the field and what's going on. And I spend a lot of time with the really large businesses in our company, understanding what the biggest and best and brightest are doing and how their businesses are running such that we can build things that work for everyone in our world, right? And we know that if we build for the biggest, most complex businesses, that we're fitting everyone's needs into that bucket. And then, you know, 25% of the time I am a punching bag. I am the guy that gets to get rocks thrown at him as it pertains to the technology. And I think that's kind of one of the things we want to talk about today is I think I don't know if misinformation is the right word. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding as it pertains to what's going on currently with the technology at KW. And hey, Brenda, I'm based in Austin. So I'm here in Austin, Texas. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding as to what's going on with the technology and how it works and what it does. So we're kind of going to go through a couple of things pretty quickly today. And like Leslie said, I'd encourage this to be as much of a conversation as you guys want. So feel free to fill the chat. And if I see it, I'll grab the question when it comes time, or Leslie can grab it, and feel free to jump in. But I want to make sure you guys get a lot of questions answered today. But I want to start out, if it's okay if I share my screen. And I just kind of want to talk a little bit about where we came from, right? And Command, or the technology that we use at Keller Williams every day of the week, is built around the foundations and the models. Can you guys see what looks like a funnel?
Yep.
Perfect. It was built around the systems and models of the MREA. And what you're looking at here is the first publicly available image from the second edition of the MREA. And this is the lead gen model. I'm sure many of you have seen this, but I always think it's worth pointing out and starting with understanding what your businesses look like in a picture form. And I think, until I saw this, and maybe a lot of you guys will think the same way, until I saw this, I don't know that I had ever thought about it in exactly this manner, right? At the very top, you see lead generation, which we all understand what that is. We all should be running prospecting-based marketing enhanced businesses. When we do that, we capture information, right? When we capture that information, it's in the form of names and phone numbers and email addresses and birthdays and physical addresses. We think of those in two categories. They fill your database, right? And your database is your business. The Red Book told us that. We think everyone's database is made up of at least two categories. And when we say the word lead or we say the word contact in Command, we mean two separate things. A lead would be someone that I have a one-way relationship with. I've met someone, I'm talking to them, and they're not talking back to me. A contact would be someone I have a two-way permission-based relationship with, right? We're in permission-based communication. And part of the reason that we felt it was important to define those words is because if we all wanted to have a conversation, and I'm sure Chris could speak for this, if Chris were to sit down in Gary's mastermind and start to have a conversation about leads, there would have to be some period of defining what that even means to every individual person. And by having definitions that make sense for everyone in our ecosystem, we now can go straight to the conversation in the mastermind and understanding best practices and what's working well. So a lead, one-way communication, a contact is permission-based two-way communication. That makes up your whole database. And I totally understand that everyone's database has many more categories than that, right? You have your sphere of influence and your VIPs and your past clients, and all those people live there too. But at the very least, it's two categories. Then there's a line right here, and we're going to get to this in practice later, but this line represents intent, right? That represents the moment that someone has intent to hire a real estate agent. And our research at KWI tells us that 6% of your database is going to hire an agent every year. So 6% of the people are going to fall out of your database and into this sales pipeline. Those are the people that we think are going to hire an agent in the next 12 months is probably a pretty normal term, right? And that's kind of what I do in my business. I'm sure it's what a lot of you do in your business. They end up landing in this cultivate category. Right now, you guys probably think of cultivate in a number of different ways. You might call that hot, nurture, and watch. You might call that A buyer, B buyer, C buyer. You might call that hot, warm, cold. Whatever it may be, that's kind of what we think about as cultivate. Someone that I know has the intent to hire an agent, but I'm not quite there to the appointment yet. Right? I ran into them at the grocery store. I met them at an open house. I know they want to buy, and I just wasn't able to set the appointment. So that's cultivate. All those people that I don't want to lose track of, right? Cultivate also is the person you met at the grocery store, and you ran into them, and they're an acquaintance of yours, and then 4 months later, you see that they bought a house using another agent because we didn't do a great job following up. Cultivate is where we lose a lot of our business every year. The people we know are going to buy, and we end up getting sidetracked, and we forget to follow up. Appointment through close is pretty self-explanatory, right? We go from cultivate, we set the appointment, we have an active buyer or seller at some point, they go under contract and the business closes. I always think it's important to share this because it sets the stage for the language that we all use and that I'll be using later when we talk about it. I think the other big thing that is important to think about as it pertains to our technology is the foundation and the intent it was built on. This is an image from the old version of the MREA, right? And I'm sure many of you recognize this. So many of the systems that are used in our real estate world today from a technology standpoint operate, I think, in one way on this chart, and Command operates the other. Remember, Command is here and built around the systems and models of the MREA. Build a database, feed it every day, communicate with it systematically. We start at the center of this circle and work our way out, meaning we want to make sure we take care of the most important people in our world and then work our way out to the people that are not as important to us. And I'm not saying that new leads isn't important. Don't mistake that for what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I would bet that almost everyone on this phone call, if they were to look at where all their business came from last year, it would be from your sphere of influence, right? I would say it comes from the group of people that either know me or know someone that knows me. Our allied resources, our METs, all those people in the middle of this circle that we can't lose track of if we want to continue to grow a business. That certainly doesn't mean that Command can't generate new leads for you and turn them into METs. But a lot of the other pieces of technology in our world, their foundational goal is to turn non-METs into METs. Our goal is to nurture the database and make sure you don't lose the people you already have and then continue to add new ones. So I think these are two important graphics to show because it kind of sets this table of what our technology intends to do and go from there. So one of the things that I hear a lot, and whether it's an email from Gary or Josh or an agent, usually it's an agent that's emailed them and says, Command isn't working, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for a team. It doesn't work for a big team. It doesn't work for a team that does a lot of units. I think that does it work and how it works sometimes get mistaken for the same thing. And so I always like to think about the conversation in a little bit of how versus what. And when I say how versus what, it's not how it works, it's what you're trying to accomplish. And if we go back and we'll remove real estate from the equation, we'll go to a really simple explanation. If you're using another piece of technology now and you're thinking about using a new one, how you operate that piece of technology will change. If I bought a new washer and dryer today, how I did my laundry would change. The result of me doing my laundry wouldn't change. I would put the soap in a different place and I would hit different buttons and it would spend more or less time in the laundry machine. But at the end of the day, I would still accomplish the same goal, which is clean, dry clothes. Yes, David, laundry machines are easy to use and everyone knows how to figure those out in 10 minutes. We'll move to the cell phone. I'm an iPhone user. Let's pretend I made the decision tomorrow to switch to an Android because I had a compelling reason to do so. I was trying to lose costs. I was trying to gain functionality. I was trying to do more things with one device. Some reason I decided to move phones from an iPhone to an Android. I would spend probably the next 2, 3, 4 weeks extremely frustrated on how things worked, right? I wouldn't know how to send text messages or download apps or where my music was or where my photos were or how to log into my bank account. All the hows would become really frustrating to me and could masquerade themselves as not working. But after a certain amount of time, I'd get comfortable with the new phone and I would understand that it did all of the same things my old phone did. And in fact, it did a lot of them much better. And maybe it did some worse as well, right? There may be things that I like that the iPhone did that the Android doesn't do and vice versa. But as we move forward and as you guys, if you find yourself, one, using our new piece of technology and you find yourself frustrated with it, I would always think about focusing on what you're trying to accomplish and not how it gets done. And there's plenty of people in our ecosystem via our market center tech trainers and our regional tech trainers that can help you figure out the how, as long as you know what you're trying to accomplish. So I hope that makes sense. And I hope that's just a little bit of a different way to think about things when you reach those points of frustration. And I reach them too, right? There are plenty of things in Command that I don't use every day in my real estate business. And I think that's one kind of last piece. So many people I talk to are like, well, I just want to use it all, right? And I think that, I don't think that's misguided. I do think that trying to jump in and use everything from the jump isn't the easiest way to be successful, right? It's the 80-20 rule in Command, just like it is anywhere else. Find the 20% that's going to give you 80% of your result and use that to start out and kind of wade your way deeper into the system as you find things that are valuable in your business. Back to the cell phone reference, right? We all have our smartphones that come with, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 apps already on them. I never use the compass on my phone ever, but I use the calculator every day. Well, just because I don't use the compass, that doesn't mean I'm going to throw my phone away and not use it, right? I'm going to use the pieces of my phone that are valuable to me, and I'm not going to use the pieces that I don't find valuable. And so thinking about our technology the same way, I think is super, super important. Leslie, before we kind of jump in and show what I think are some things that work really well today, I'm just going to use my command account that I use for my business. Is there anything in the chat that we need to check out before then?
No, I love that. And Kristen, thank you so much for sharing that comment and like admitting, right? Like she's using only a 10th of what works. So I guess the question that's coming out of this, David, is, and might be where you're actually naturally going, is the concept of this 80-20 rule, right? Like we're not tackling everything at once. Success is sequential, not simultaneous. What is the 20% that if they're just getting familiar with this, that they should be focusing on right now that will have the biggest impact in their business?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really hard to do anything in real estate without a database. So I think contacts is a really logical place to start, right? There's very little that you can do in Command without contacts. Now, there is some things, right? Designs is one of those things that you can use in Command today without having a contact in the system and probably find some value from it. And our database is our business. Gary told us that in the Red Book a long time ago. Like without contacts in the system, you're going to have a hard time finding lots of value. I think opportunities is the next big place, and campaigns probably where people by and large are seeing the most benefit. And I'm going to just pull up my my command real quick, and I'll kind of walk you through what I mean there. So without contacts, and I think Command also has what I would call kind of a bunch of spider web applets. If you start using one, it's going to wade you into the waters of another because you're going to find value there too. When I log into the system, and pardon my MacBook Air, which is horrendously slow when I'm sharing my screen, streaming video using 3 screens at the same time. Contacts, we all understand what that is, right? That's our database. That's where we house our people. I think that opportunities, and I kind of want to take this back to our lead gen model, is a place where any agent, whether you're a single agent or whether you're on a team, or whether you're a rainmaker of a team, can find a tremendous amount of value. So you're looking at my live Command account. And yes, full disclosure, my business runs on Command. This is where we all live. We use this tool and this tool only as far as technology goes in our world. And I don't have a very large business. But I do know it works for a business that's 100 units a year. It certainly works in that aspect of things. Being able to look at my business in a dashboard form like this and understand where all of my deals are at and where I'm at in that process and what my potential income looks like over the course of the next 12 months is extremely valuable. I'm going to pick on my buyer's agent, Chloe, here, and we're in buyer cultivate right now. And you see how I have this set up. So remember, these are the categories that you guys probably call, you may refer to them in this manner. You may call them A, B, C, buyer, hot, warm, cold, hot, nurture, watch, whatever that may be. So these are all of the opportunities that Chloe doesn't want to lose track of. All of these people are people that have raised their hand and said, I think I'm going to hire an agent in some way, shape, or form, right? They may not have actually said that, but we've met them and identified that they're going to hire an agent in the next 12 months, yet we haven't quite set the appointment yet. So this is an opportunity to understand in Chloe's world, what does she have working that in 0 to 3 months is going to turn into a transaction, or in 3 to 6 months that's going to turn into a transaction, or 6 to 12 months that's going to turn into a transaction. Again, these are all these people that in my past life, I kept track of on a spreadsheet or in my cell phone, or I made a note about them, but I didn't have one way to look at them all in one place. These are also the people that I would wake up in a cold sweat at 2:30 in the morning because I wondered if I forgot, did I remember to follow up with Terry Kane? I know he's not buying till December, but did I remember to follow up with him? Or did he find someone else? Because we know lots of things can change over the course of a 6-month time frame. You'll see that every one of these people, because Chloe is doing things the way she should, has an incomplete task on their opportunity. What that tells me as a rainmaker is that she has set her next follow-up with every one of these people. And that follow-up pertains to each individual opportunity in their opportunity card. And in your business, be it a single agent or a team, you're probably going to have standards around what that looks like. For us, if you're an opportunity in 6 to 12 months, every one of these tasks has to take place in minimum of once a month, meaning the next task due can't be more than 1 month away. I want Chloe following up with everyone in this category at least once a month. When we moved to 3 to 6, we cut that time in half. Follow-up for Terry Kane should be within the next 2 weeks. We want to be following up with people that we think are going to buy every 3 to 6 months, every 2 weeks. 0 to 3 months, you can guess. Every week, we should be following up with that person to see how much closer they are. So I hope this makes sense. And to me, this is visually a really, really efficient way to look at what's going on in your world and to not lose track of people. I saw some questions piling in, and Leslie, unmute herself.
Yeah, hey, David. So we've got a couple questions coming in. The first question was in regards to your timelines that you've set up here. The 6 to 12, the 3 to 6, the 0 to 3. Were those timelines you set up and created that way, or are those preset?
Those are ones that I set up. That's a great question. All of these, so some language again. Phases are these 5 things at the top. Cultivate through close. Those are phases. They cannot be changed. Inside of the phases, we have stages. All of the stages can be changed and are totally customizable by just clicking this Edit Stages button in the top right corner. So when I click that, I end up with an Edit Stages button. You can have as many stages as you wanted in any given phase. You can name them whatever you want, and they all live right here. So if I wanted to reorder them, if I wanted to add different ones, we did this because agents raised their hand through the labs process and said, I don't do 6 to 12, I do hot and cold, right? Okay, cool. You have 2 categories, great, here they are. So you can make whatever you want in any one of the phases here inside of opportunities. You can also add standard checklist items to each of these stages. Now that makes less sense probably in Cultivate, as it does make more sense the farther you get into the transaction. So if we were to go to under contract, for example, this one, you can see there's 31 checklist items during an option period, or what we would call an inspection period here in Texas. And this is how my transaction manager manages all of our things that have to be done, right? She puts them in here and then assigns it out to who does it and when it's due. So all of our transaction process lives right here inside of Command as well. So I think that anyone in their business, if you're using contacts, you should then next be using Cultivate. Who are the people that you don't want to lose track of? Who are the people that aren't quite ready for the appointment that you want to make sure you get that business? We all know it's likely that the first person in the door is the one that gets the agreement. Be the first one in the door. Don't forget them. So I think Cultivate is a huge, huge win. Along with that are the tasks that come with Cultivate. And another kind of mind shift, something Command does that I'm sure there's other systems that do it. I'm not intimately aware with any of them, is we separate the task between the contact and the opportunity. Meaning when I call someone for a care call or a quarterly phone call or to invite them to our client event, that task is attached to the contact record. When I call someone to try and move a transaction forward, that task lives on the opportunity. And I'm going to go and use the example of a woman named Loretta, who, as a rainmaker, this person lives in my database. She's my contact, and I've handed this transaction off to Chloe. The cool part here is David owns the contact, and David's assigned to the contact, meaning I'm the one responsible for maintaining the relationship. Chloe is responsible for everything that surrounds the transaction. If a task comes up that's attached to Loretta's contact card to invite her to a client event, that's a David phone call. If the task is check in with Loretta to see if she's ready to buy a house or she wants to go see houses this weekend, that's a Chloe task. So being able to separate the tasks between 2 people and have one of them live in the contact and one of them live in the opportunity, that's really, to me, it's really powerful. So here's Loretta's contact record, and you can see I'm the owner of the contact and it's assigned to me. Contacts can only be assigned to a single person, because we think that one person should be responsible for maintaining this relationship. It's really hard to have multiple people maintain a personal relationship with someone. as it pertains to the real estate business. Now, we all know that opportunities have multiple people that can be assigned to them. You might have a listing manager and a transaction manager and the agent and anyone else that may be dealing with the transaction as it moves along. David's responsible for Loretta's personal relationship. Chloe's responsible for this opportunity that lives in the sales pipeline. So to me, that's another way that commands a little bit different, that if you're not thinking about it that way, you might start putting opportunity, what I would consider opportunity related tasks, which are follow-ups about any given purchase, on the contact record, when I actually think they should live here in the opportunity. How does this help you in the future? Loretta is going to be in my database as long as I'm in real estate, and I'm going to maintain that relationship for just as long as I'm in real estate. This one buy transaction, once it's closed, almost nothing that happened inside of that transaction is going to be important to me in the future. Meaning it's all going to live in this opportunity. And if I click into this, it'll open the opportunity. I could be taking notes in the opportunity as opposed to taking notes in the contact record. Think of it as Loretta's contact record as a master folder in Google Drive. And every opportunity Loretta ever has as a subfolder of her personal folder. Meaning I can always dive back into the opportunity at a later date and pick out her inspection or find the note about the appraisal, whatever those things are. But I don't need it junking up my contact timeline with Loretta. Meaning 3 years from now, when I go to make my quarterly phone call or invite Loretta to a client event, I don't really care what happened on her last transaction. I do care about the note I took during our last quarterly phone call where she told me her daughter was going to college, or where she got a new dog, right? I want to separate my personal relationship with Loretta in some ways from each individual transactions relationship. So again, here are notes on the opportunity that live in the opportunity and that will live in the opportunity forever, whether or not it's closed or not. So here it is. So again, I think contacts and opportunities, it'd be really hard pressed to tell me someone who can't find a win in those two applets right now. And I saw there was some chat stuff coming in. Leslie, were we getting some questions around that?
Yeah, just a couple questions that came in. Tiffany Danley asked, do you have all of your leads set up on a smart plan?
So when you say leads, I think someone I have one-way communication with. So no, I don't. I have tasks set up to try and follow up with them. And some of them I have set up on smart plans. I do have all of my contacts on smart plans. I have them all on the quarterly phone call plan, and I have them all on the monthly neighborhood nurture. Meaning I'm reminded to call all of my contacts once a month to stay in touch, and once a quarter. And I'm also sending them automatically, without me having to do anything, a piece of real estate related information to their email once a month. So
Perfect.
16 of my 33 touches are already taken care of.
So that circles back to that, really distinguishing what is a lead and what is a contact and what is the communication. So a couple of people asked, and just a clarification on where do the transactions go after they close? They seem to disappear. Are they doing something wrong? Somebody responded with, it goes into all opportunities. Can you shed any more light on that?
100%. So whoever answered that question is right. Contracts or opportunities live in this closed phase for the entire month that they close, and then they fall off. They don't go away, but they're no longer in your active sales pipeline. So they're past. They live in this all opportunities category. And I'm sure many of you guys on this call keep a spreadsheet of all of your deals, whether that's forever or by the year. All opportunities is everything forever. And you can filter this the same way you would filter the contact record, right? Or in a similar way, choose your market center. What type of opportunity was it? What phase are you looking for? Who is the contact related to it? All of those things you can filter from here and search in all opportunities and go find them. That's one way to find them. Another way is to go to the actual contact record and look in that opportunities tab on the right-hand side of the screen. To go back, I think, to the question about smart plans, I don't want to gloss over how we do. I don't know if the question was asked around what we're doing if their smart plans are on all of these people in Cultivate. If they're part of our database and they're on our quarterly call and monthly neighborhood nurture, certainly they're on those smart plans. All of our interactions in this realm are not automated, meaning these are all personal contacts. If I were to go back to Chloe I don't necessarily want to be automatically communicating with Addison because it may not make sense for whatever my last conversation was. My last conversation with Addison is going to shape my next task. Meaning, I think all of these are personal conversations. I don't think you can automate your way out of this type of follow up. Maybe if you have a really, really sophisticated system, you could set something that had intelligent responses, I guess, around what they heard. But if I talk to Addison today, who I think is buying in 6 to 12 months, and Addison tells me, actually, things have changed. Interest rates are super low. I know that inventory is not getting any better. I'm better off getting in now than spending 10% more a year from now. Now, all of a sudden, my 1-year follow-up plan that's automated that I had Addison on doesn't make any sense because all of a sudden, Addison's now a 0 to 3 monther. And my next task has changed because of the last conversation I had. So I don't know if that makes sense or if it answers the question around that. That's how I think about it. I don't know if that's right. It's just how I think about it.
That's great. Just a couple questions. I know you guys are always improving the system. Jennifer Florin asked, has it recently been updated that they can have more items on the checklist because prior it was phased out at 9 total. So it sounds like based on your plan that you had up to 31 that we have increased that.
There should be unlimited items available on the checklist. Yeah, you should be able to put as many as you want on there. I don't remember a time that there was a limit, but there may have been. Full disclosure, again, my team didn't rip the Band-Aid off and jump over to Command in a week. Like, this was a process to make sure we didn't lose track of what was going on in our world over many months. And there was a point that we were using opportunities, but we weren't using the checklists, right? We were just using to move the cards forward. So I think that's another good example of people feeling they have to get it all done today. You don't have to. Like, use it. When you get comfortable, use some more. When you get comfortable, use some more. So again, I'm a huge fan of contacts and opportunities.
So David, there's been a question. So Nan had asked, like, her neighborhood smart plans cancel out. Is that being corrected? So I'd love you to, if you can answer that, fantastic. But maybe a reminder to our agents as they're how they would go about giving feedback on the system. If this is a system built by agents for agents, when those kind of questions come up, how do they get feedback to you guys?
Well, you can get feedback to me if you want. I can't promise that I'm always going to be able to answer. The best channel for that. So I'll answer the question first about that. There was the underlying mail service provider that sends out our monthly neighborhood nurtures was misclassifying some good Gmail addresses, so good email addresses, as not good Gmail addresses. So that caused some hiccups with some people. That has since been corrected, so everything should be good there. And if for whatever reason your contacts were affected, just go resubscribe them to the monthly neighborhood nurture smart plan. You'll be good to go. As far as feedback goes, we think about it in 3 ways. And some of your market centers may have a market center tech trainer or someone, a point person in your market center. You also have a regional tech trainer. And we always encourage someone, just like you would with any other company that you work closely with, whether that was a gym or anyone you would go see in person, is start at the market center first. And your market center tech trainer or the point person on tech in your area is going to try and diagnose, is the thing that you have an actual bug, something that's broken? Is it a feature request? It's something that you hope the system does that it actually doesn't do? Or is it something that maybe you just aren't super proficient on knowing how to work that one piece? So a training opportunity. So our market center level people are going to try and triage that immediately and say, and that's also your fastest point to reaction. I'm sure there have been people that have struggled on hold with chat support or email support, and trying to support a community of 180,000 agents with chat and email support. Things get backed up because a lot of the things, over half of the tickets our support team gets are actually training or feature requests, meaning they're having to sift through lots of training and feature requests before they're tackling things that are actually broken. So start at the market center, talk to them. If your market center person needs to escalate that, they can go to your regional tech trainer, who in your region, it's a wonderful woman named Laura Posey, and she has a direct line into our top level support team. Meaning when Laura escalates an issue, and I'm not telling you to go escalate issues to Laura, when Laura deems an issue necessary to escalate, it gets the same weight as when Josh escalates something that's broken. So the fastest way to get to Laura is to go through your market center tech trainer and make sure it's something that, hey, maybe I'm stuck in not knowing how this works, as opposed to what I'm trying to do, I can do just in a different way. So start there. That's the easiest way to get stuff. And then there's still the question mark in the top right corner where you can see, here's KW help articles, here's chat with supports, and post idea. Yeah, it takes you to ideas.kw.com where you can post ideas for things that are to be built.
Awesome. Hey, David, there's a couple of questions coming in regards to team use. So one of the things I love that you've highlighted is the fact that this technology is really meant to increase the relationship between our consumer experience. And in addition to that, now that Team Command has been released, it's that communication relationship within our group or team working together. So for those of you, as I didn't see use the word rainmaker, that would be the leader of the team or the team lead that in each of our market centers. So, or in each business. The other question is you are the right person to answer this. Are any of our 100 plus teams throughout Keller Williams actively using this within their business?
100 plus meaning?
Units.
Oh yeah, there's plenty. There's plenty of teams. You know, I'll actually take an example out of your region. Chris's friend and my friend Brian Gubernick has an expansion team in, I believe, in Portland area or somewhere in Oregon. I don't know if it's in one of your guys' market centers or not. Yep. And God, what is almost 4 months ago now, when Gary and Jay sat down and started to talk about the fact that we should all be remargining our businesses and finding our expenses, Brian was the first one to call me and say, hey, I need to move off of my other piece of technology and I need to move to Command. And we started that process. And this was a business that, I don't know how many units he does in that expansion location, but a database of 25,000, a really, really big business in our world. The number one agent in Mid-America, I think, or Greater Heartland. The number one agent in Greater Heartland, his name's Mike Dooley. His team is fully on Command, effective about 2 weeks ago. And he did more units last quarter than I'll do this year. So he's a very large business. There's a lot of our large teams. And I'm not here, again, remember, the mission statement for my job is to help agents run more efficient, more profitable businesses. I don't get pats on the back for making people use Command. I do get pats on the back when agents raise their hand and say, wow, my business is running better. I'm doing more with less because of talking with David or talking with one of our regional tech trainers. That's how we win. We don't win by just getting people to use our technology if it doesn't make sense for them. So yes, there are plenty of large teams using it. Again, with any change in technology, I don't know who asked the question, there's a lot of how I do it today isn't going to be how I do it in the future, but what I'm accomplishing today, can I accomplish that same thing in the future in a different way?
Perfect. So it's really a platform built from whether you're a solo agent or up to thousands of transactions. And Chris had mentioned both Lance Loken and Seth Campbell are actively using Command. I want to blaze through a couple of other questions that are coming in. Yeah. There's been going back to those closed transactions, they were saying, is there a screen for just closed snapshots and pending snapshots so they can track their closed business and how close they are to hitting their goals over the year?
Let me share my screen again. Sorry, I shouldn't have unshared it. So yeah, you'll see on the dashboard. And again, this may not be a report that looks like the report you use today or that you use in your current piece of technology. I know that, like, my business partner, who's pretty archaic as it pertains to technology, believe it or not, still keeps his spreadsheet. Like, he still wants his spreadsheet that he's been using for years because it makes him comfortable. But there's a whole goal versus actual section right here. And here's a great example of a piece of Command that I don't really use. And that's okay. And I have no problem saying that I just haven't spent the time digging into the goals section yet. But you can still track all of that here in the report section. So where you're at with how many leads you needed to generate to hit your goal and so on and so forth. So there's a whole goals and reporting section. We certainly don't have time at this point to go through all of it, but you can dig in here and spend a fair amount of time figuring out if that's something that works for you, or if you still, like my business partner, want to also maintain your spreadsheet for this year and forever about, all of the things that you want to track. And the farther we go down the path here, the more robust all of this will get, including the reporting aspect.
Perfect. So next question, somebody said, Phil Evans said that he heard that insights might be going away and be discontinued. Is that actually happening? And if so, is there a plan to bring it back?
I think you're talking about insights inside of what currently is known as the application Kelly. I haven't heard anything about those going away. So if so, I mean, it's not to say that that's not true, Phil. I haven't heard that.
Perfect. And then Kristen Smith also asked, are there MAPS coaches going to be able to access their command so for accountability, or is that something that's been considered, or is that completely separate?
No, absolutely been considered. I think one of the things that a lot of our teams get uncomfortable with now as it pertains to command is the permissioning levels of people in their world, right? And you'll see pre-mega camp a massive increase in the ability to control permissions for people on your team. And we're working with MAPS to figure out how can my MAPS coach just see into what I'm doing every day, right? If I'm tracking all my activities and all of that stuff in command, why can't they just see into it? So we're working on that. And again, your command is under your credentials, and right now that's managed in the team tools and Winmore at your market center. So that's how people would get access to your command account currently. I think the thing I would do now, Kristen, in that world would just be do a Zoom call with your MAPS coach and do a screen share, right? What you saw me do with Chloe's sales pipeline is how I start every one of my accountability meetings with Chloe. That's one of the things I'm responsible for in my team is accountability. And we start every accountability session with her sales pipeline, and we look through all of her transactions, see how many she has, what follow-ups she missed on, and how we can continue to move people forward.
Perfect. We had a question, and we won't have time to go through it today, but perhaps something we can share after. Tiffany Danley asked, would you be willing to share your checklists for your 3 cultivate phases?
So my 3 cultivate phase checklists are super easy. There's one item on them standard, and it's just check-in. And the job of the agent, when they create that opportunity, they get one checklist item, it's check-in. They need to set it for the appropriate amount of time, what our standard is in our business. Standard for 6 to 12 is once a month. Standard for 3 to 6 is every 2 weeks. And standard for 0 to 3 months is once a week. Set that checklist item and continue to check them off. And it's literally just a check-in call, right? It's the, hey, are there any houses I can show you this weekend? It's has something changed?
All right, last question before we go to wrap up here. If someone downloads your app via text share, does that automatically put them into the consumer website or the default one? Do they have to register online as well?
So there's a difference, and I think this is something that is confused potentially often, is just because someone downloads your app doesn't mean that we know who they are. We only know who they are once they register on your app. And that registration, if it comes in the form of the email address that you have on file for them, will attach them to you and will allow them to log into your consumer website the same way they do as your app. Now, if they never register, or they register with an email address that's different than the one that you have, if the email address is different, it's going to create a new contact for them, because we look at that as a new person. You know, I'm sure many of us on this call have multiple email addresses, and there's probably one we use for things sometimes that maybe is the one we don't use all the time. So as long as they are using the same email address, it's going to link you to that contact in command, and it will let them log into both the website and the app.
Perfect.
And then you have visibility.
So David, wrap it up as they leave today. What is the one big thing you want them to take away from this conversation?
I think to me, it's use cultivate, right? Like using that cultivate section. I don't care how big or small your business is. We have all lost transactions in the past, and we'll all lose transactions in the future of people that are in that cultivate stage. Remember, they have intent to hire an agent, and they're just not to the appointment yet. To me, I think that's where every agent can win, regardless of amount of business or number of transactions per year, is get some people in cultivate. Don't lose track of business that's already there to be had, right? You've done all the hard work of generating the lead and maintaining the relationship, and now that person's ready to transact the business. Don't lose them right before the appointment.
Perfect. So cultivate, cultivate, cultivate. All right. Well, we are going to wrap this State of the Industry address up today. Chris, any final parting words for us?
As much as anything, David, thank you for spending an hour of your day, your morning with our group. It's incredibly helpful. I think one takeaway, because I've been getting private texts as well, is oftentimes we make judgments, right? We're very judgmental creatures. typically, and hopefully we are changing that over time and changing that quickly. But we also make judgments on tech, like, hey, this just doesn't work, or hey, it didn't work for me, or and the fact is it continues to get better and to run smoother. And hopefully what we see today is truly any size business on the call today can run their entire business off of command. Perfectly? No. But let's be honest, we weren't running it perfectly on anything else we're on either. It's just we don't love change, and so we judge change more than we judge what's comfortable. So as much as anything, David, thank you for that. And as a network, we will continue to make sure that our really our agent services division is sort of leading. We want our division to lead the company in providing simple techniques to get our agents plugged into command. We know that that will save you money. We also know that it will improve your conversion. And we also know that it'll deepen relationships with your personal customers, which is our competitive advantage. So thanks for everyone for being on the call. Thank you, David, for your time. Thank you, Leslie, for setting everything up and sort of driving as many questions through. I think we got almost all answered. We'll go through this chat, we'll grab some questions, and we'll get a few more answered and then out in our email as well. Cool.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, guys.
Paul.
Appreciate it. Take care.